Today we are very privileged to have with us Michael Gastauer, who is with a company called Balboa United. He's the director of clinical research, and it's nice to have somebody from the private sector. Up until this point, we've had everybody from the public sector. So thank you so much, Michael, for giving up your time, and please share a little bit about what it is you do in a clinical field of clinical
Okay.
research.
So as Director of Clinical Research, Area Director for Balboa United, we are a primarily based nephrology group. So we have about 50,000 active chronic kidney disease patients and about 5,000 active dialysis patients. So we have a lot of patients to pull from to participate in clinical research. Um, now, the clinical research arm of the company, we have about 1,500 who are actively participating. So we do primarily phase 2 through 4 research, and I'll go through the phases in a little bit, but phase 2 to 4 clinical research, which is the later phase, um, at about 6 centers. It's great. Yeah, what we do there.
Um, you mentioned the phases. Would you
Yes.
like to
Yeah, of
expand
course.
upon
Yeah,
those?
so I'll go through the phases of clinical research. I mean, when I first got in the industry, what I thought was, oh, great, I'll be working in a lab. Essentially, I'll be working with mice, I'll be working with tubes. And it's not the case, as we know. So there are 4 phases in clinical research. Start to finish, you're looking anywhere from 10 to 18 years and above $1 billion. So of course, before you can get to the first stage, stage one of clinical research, phase one, you have to conduct what are called preclinical trials. This is where the scientists come in, proof of concept. They put the drug in vivo, which means in life with um, rats or monkeys, and then they'll do tubes as well. In vitro, just to see if the drug works. They'll check what is called pharmacokinetics, essentially how it's metabolized in your body, and then pharmacodynamics, which is how it works in a live organism. So once they have the proof of concept, this is the drug, and then they can submit that information to the FDA, and the FDA looks at it and goes, okay, either yes or no. If the FDA says yes, we go into phase one clinical research. This is where we work with human subjects. Phase one is healthy volunteers, and the purpose of phase one is to see what it does. Are there side effects? What dose works the best? Is there a range of doses, a high dose, a low dose, a medium dose? So in phase one, we're usually looking around 10 to 100 people, healthy volunteers. Very often, these volunteers will be held in a room itself 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes as long as a week, and they have a clinical research coordinator essentially following them around everywhere they go. They tell you when to eat, when to sleep, what to drink. They control all the variables, and they'll take samples, let's say of your blood, pre, post, at certain time points. Um, and after this, they look at it and they say, okay, what does this drug do? What are the correct doses for this medication? How does it work? What are the side effects? And they present that information to the FDA. 70% of clinical trials will get past phase one. So then we go into phase two. Now, instead of healthy volunteers, it's the specific group of the disease or the indication that they're looking into studying. And this is where they can really get into the effects on your body, side effects, more into the dosing as well, what works. Really, what they did in phase one, but now with the actual indication itself specifically. Now, phase two is a little scary for pharmaceutical companies because this is about 30% that'll pass. So they present it to the FDA. If FDA likes what they see, go into phase three. If they don't like what they see, you can go into what are called phase 2A, phase 2B studies, where they just gather a little bit more information. Now, phase three means we know what the drug does. We know what the side effects are, or expected side effects. We know what the dosing range is. Now we want to know the efficacy of this medication. And the way to find that out is by doing it statistically on a large amount of people. So anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 individuals. And these are studies that are usually 1 to 4 years in length. And these clinical trials, they're randomized, very often placebo controlled, depending on the indication. Now, there are some indications where You can't expect somebody to take a placebo, so they'll often use an active comparator, so a market drug. Nonetheless, these studies allow that large amount of data to be captured by the pharmaceutical company, analyzed, and then presented to the FDA. So at phase 3, they finish the studies. The FDA looks at it and they go, okay, so this is how it works in your body. This is what it does. These are the side effects we see. These are the dosing ranges. They take all of that and they say, now compared to what is on the market, is it the same? Is it better? If those answers are yes, and the efficacy and the side effects aren't anything crazy when people are growing extra toes, then the pharmaceutical company will present a regulatory package, essentially of all the information gathered from preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, to phase 3 trials, and submit it to the FDA. Once it's submitted to the FDA, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get on the market, and then the drug's approved. Now, when the medication is approved every 5 years, the FDA comes back and they say, okay, your drug's been on the market for 5 years. We weren't able to collect all the data we would have during this phase 1 to 3 process. Now let's see what it's doing to people since it's been on the market for 5 years. Are there any adverse events or side effects we didn't catch? Are there select groups or populations of individuals that are having negative things happen, taking other medications, interactions with other medications? So the FDA will take the medication, say, okay, it's been on the market for 5 years. We noticed, I can give you an example. This medication people are taking for diabetes are having more heart attacks. Is this true? We don't know. So now we're going to do a post-marketing phase 4 trial on individuals with diabetes and see if there are any cardiovascular events. And they do that same trial, randomized, double-blind, controlled, whatever the FDA needs them to do. And at the end, they present the data and they say, okay, either yes, it does, no, it doesn't. Very often this is where drugs can also be removed from the market, or they can be slapped with the black box warning. So this helps many times physicians when they're prescribing their medications. If you look at the side effects, or you look at, don't take this medication. With this medication, don't drink grapefruit juice if you're taking this. That's where all the information comes from. So all in all, once again, about $1 billion, which is a lot, but I can give you an example. There's a company called Gilead. A couple of years ago, they had a hepatitis C medication cure that came out. They made $30 billion in the first quarter, so don't feel too bad for them. One thing aside from the money on the pharmaceutical end, that's an entirely different argument itself. And besides progressing in science and medications, one thing that people really don't see about clinical research is how it helps a lot of our patients. Specifically at Balboa, all of our patients are on Medicare. Medicare's not that good. Very often they can't afford their medications, or they can't afford the procedures or copays. So clinical research for a lot of people is a different avenue of medical care where they can get free medications, extra care as well. I mean, they have teams of people who are watching them. So when I describe clinical research to somebody who's naive, I really say it's concierge care is what it is. So it's very gratifying as well on the patient's end.
Finally, quickly, where do you get your subjects from?
So our subjects come directly from our own database, the 50,000 patients. Part of our onboarding process for the patients, not onboarding, but when they come in, they essentially can sign a piece of paper that says, I consent or I do not consent to be contacted for clinical research. So we'll do a database search that way. Most private organizations will have their own database if they are to be successful. Of course, you can go out into the streets and the news, but really with the very specific inclusion and exclusion criteria of trials, you want to know the patients. Knowing the patients means, in most cases, they're your own.
Michael, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to come
course.
out and speak to my students. I know they really get a kick out of these videotaped lectures because they've told me so. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.